All right. And welcome back to the Ultra Running Guys. You got Jeremy Reynolds and Jeff Winchester of the Ultra Running Guys. And the reason that we're here is to help you take your next step in your ultra running journey. And so these episodes are all about just that, finding races that you can put on your calendar so that you can take that next step. And tonight, I am excited. We've talked about this race a lot on the show. We've got a lot of personal experiences with it. But before we bring on the man himself, Jeff, why don't you tell us what we'll be talking about?
Again, we talked, before. This is one of those episodes and one of those people that we have personally both met. We both run this race before. We have both DNF'd this race before. It has been the best of both worlds. And I feel like I could just say, Yeti Army, and everybody that's listening is like, yes, Yeti Army, we're here. Because that's the kind of mantra and cult and community and things that this guy has created. And so tonight we're going to talk about the Yeti 100 with our good friend. And I say good friend because if you've ever met him, he's hugged you.
We've hugged.
And you feel like you've always known him. And his name is obviously Jason Green, the race director of the Yeti 100 and all of the other Yeti races that you have probably heard about as well. But the Yeti 100, it takes place the last weekend in September in Damascus, Virginia. Or at least that's the central spot of it. The race starts at White Top and has a gradual descent. And I say gradual descent for 18 miles, in which most of us blow out our quads because we're going too fast, because of the adrenaline, and the experience of being a part of the Yeti Army for the first times makes people lose their ever-loving minds. The race is run on the Virginia Creeper Trail, and the surface, I say, is not technical at all. It's a very smooth, fast, easy course. It is, we just realized, US ATF certified for those who are interested in something like that. Again, we have the race director, Jason Green, with us tonight to talk about it, all things Yetis. And if you have the good fortune of running this race, again, you finish, he hugs you, you call it good night. Jason Green, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. And it's so great to see both of you again in normal clothes.
We stink less.
Yes.
Not having to hug stinky.
And I'm so glad you just brought up that certification. Do you know, every year the people rely so heavily on their watch? Sometimes I have people come in at 98.5 miles and they run around in the parking lot, right? And this year we had someone come in at 103 miles and they're like, the course is long. I was like, no. And I'm like, it's certified, but no American world records can be held because the descent is greater than the ascent, right? So they have to really be even. But I certified it just so people know they're running 100.2 miles,
So you can leave the watch at home, not complain about it.
No, you can run in the parking lot and do extra circles. They'll just laugh at you.
Yeah. Sometimes people come in and they're like, oh, my watch says 95.99, and they start running around. And I'm like, what?
Not me. When I'm done, I'm done.
Oh, same.
That show is over.
I mean? Same. Race director measure the course short. Too bad. I'm done. Right?
Good job. Give me my medal. Give me my buckle.
I just PR'd a 50K.
That's awesome. All right, well, look, man.
I feel seen.
Yeah, that's right. Brag on that all day. There's so much we want to talk about. You have just created an incredible community. Your reputation for just, I don't know. We talked about it before. Every time I've shown up and I've seen you, I'm like, you greet me like we've been hanging out last week. You've known me forever. And I always am like, does he remember me, or is he just that good at making me feel welcome? And maybe it's some of both. But let me ask this, man, before we get into some of the stuff for the race, Yeti 100, what is your personal favorite thing about the race?
Oh, I think my personal favorite thing, maybe why you said every time you see me when you come there, I'm so excited, is you get to see I get to share a big part of me, where I grew up, where generations of my family grew up. I'm so very excited, I overly excited, that people travel from all over and come to this little place in Appalachia where we called home. And when I was a teenager, I wanted out of so bad, right? Like, but I get so like it's awesome, and that's what I envision. So, and then when it's happening, I just get proud, and my family's very proud, and it just fills me with a lot of happiness, to share my hometown, and it does a lot for the economy. We uh, tourism is a great driver for everyone in Southwest Virginia now. So it really, and sometimes people run the race end up buying homes there. It's awesome, and I think it's like welcoming someone into your home, right? You're glad they're there, and you want to be a good host.
That's awesome. I'm sitting here visualizing us at White Top right now. He's giving the pre-race meeting, and he's actually saying similar stuff about the fact that it's so important to the community. It means so much to everybody as you're running through the community and stuff. And so it literally just took me back to that moment sitting on White Top where he says something very similar. So
and years ago, people, like when I was like telling people I was going to have the race in there, and they're like, how are you going to get people here? That's what they would ask. We don't have a major airport. And I'm like, I don't know. They'll just come maybe, right? And they were like, and the race is on a Friday. Who's going to, and I was like, it's easier to take a Friday off than a Monday off. That's why the race is on Friday. So it was easier for everyone. And to me, it's good that everyone shows up, and we get up near 38, 39 states every year there.
You just said something that I've always really appreciated, and I heard you say it in a different way before, but the race is on a Friday, so for everybody listening. And I remember hearing that, and I can't remember if it was at the pre-race or if it was just in conversation, but the fact that finishing on a Saturday and having Sunday to essentially be wrecked if you need to be wrecked, instead of doing what most people would do and probably make the dangerous drive home when they're not in a condition to do so, right? So huge kudos to you for that.
And it's easier. Everybody wants out of the office on Thursday, Friday, right? But on Monday, everybody wants that damn email answered, right? And so it's much easier to be off those days than Monday. And from personal experience, like one time my feet wouldn't fit into my work shoe. So I had to, so it sucked. Right? Like my feet were so big and I couldn't make it to work because I couldn't get into shoes. So
see, he does this to keep everybody employed.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. I just, it's just by design. I was like, man, have you ever noticed when it comes Friday, everybody's like ducking out of the office, right? But on Monday, it's like hell is coming with you, So that's really why it happens on Friday.
The weekend starts on Thursday.
Yeah.
That's how it's always been in life, right?
So true.
But so Jason, you have got a secret sauce. Like you have got this thing nailed when it comes to the Yeti Army. What is it about your races, and not your races, just about the Yeti 100 and anything that you're really kind of involved with right now that makes people want to come back and be a part of it? You said that the community itself was like, how are you going to get people to come here in the first place? You don't have a problem with people coming. You're selling out the races. We're going to get to that a little bit later on, but you have a lot of repeat offenders. And so why do people want to why do people keep coming back and can't get enough of the Yeti?
I think it's the enthusiasm of all the volunteers. We all share a very commonplace first, last DNF. We're just happy you're out there. And it's a place truly where everyone belongs. Like you run some races and, they tear down the arch by the time you come through, right? Like everybody, and that kind of sucks sometimes, right? And we just built a place where people belong from first to last to DNF. We just require you to show up with a big heart, right? And I think the message is loud enough that we get the right people with the right attitude to the start line, and that's very perfect. And I try to hold the flame for ultra running up very, very high, right? And it's a very welcoming community, and I grew up skateboarding, and skateboarding did the same to me. You're right, like the same type of community, like people. It wasn't the person that maybe did a 360 that day. It was the person that learned to drop in, that had their best day, and everybody cheered for, right? And that's how ultra running is. It's not always first place. It's those people on the struggle bus sometimes that just make it all awesome and amazing.
And you can feel that when you're
Yeah.
out there. And so I think that's a really important point for anybody that's listening, especially if you're scared about taking on your first 100, right? But you want to give it a shot. This is the place to go out, have a good time, and know that if you are dead last, you're going to be accepted just like somebody who goes out and crushes it.
And you know what? Like, if you DNF, that's me too. Like, I think I love that I get the opportunity to fail. I mean, God, we live in such a safe ass space these days. People are like, and that's what I like about skateboarding. You had to try a trick 50 times before you got it, right? Like, you just failed and failed and failed, and you got it. And that's the beauty of 50, 100 miles, 200 miles, is that. And 50Ks. There's a lot I've DNF 50Ks, and it just happens. And I love the opportunity. It's a big part of it. It makes, when I cross the finish line, real amazing, right? I'm very happy. But guess what? I always count myself very lucky when I'm at the starting line of any race, any distance. I'm just happy to be there.
Agreed. It's funny. I think if somebody's listening or watching on YouTube, whatever it is, and they're not familiar with the Yeti 100, then they're going to be confused about all these references to skateboarding. And so I know that the first time I showed up to the first time that I ran it, I was like, why am I getting a deck? Like, why did I just get a deck? And everybody's got a deck. We're all getting a deck today. And that's one of the things in swag that we all received was a skateboard deck. And so have you always given those out? Has that been
for the Virginia race? Yep. And that, except during COVID, the guy who makes our skateboards in Georgia had to shut down because he couldn't get wood, the wood. And the reason I do that is because that's where when I started the Yeti Trail Runners, I have a list of rules I wrote myself when I was a teenager, and I held a skateboard contest behind a Texaco down from my house, right? And I wrote myself these rules about having the contest and what I wanted out of the contest. And it's just a reminder that skateboarding taught me a lot, and it's a piece of me. So when people they come to my hometown. The skateboard taught me a lot of lessons. I got to travel around and skate with some of the best in the world, and I thought it's a lot better than a t-shirt. And if running don't work out for you, can try skateboarding.
Except they don't have trucks and wheels or anything like that on them. Just so everybody knows, you got to do it yourself.
Oh yeah. Well, and if you're too beat up the couple weeks afterwards, you can skate to the store and get a 6-pack. Like, there's a lot of possibilities with a skateboard. There's not many possibilities with a t-shirt.
That's so funny. I mean, that's true.
True story. True story. True story.
All right, man. So here's the deal. We want to talk about course, different things, give people some tips, pointers, understanding. I'm going to ask this question. I've been at your pre-race, so I'm pretty certain I can nail the answer. But what do you think that people underestimate about the Yeti 100?
Oh, geez. I mean, to me, I think they've spent their days training at a certain pace, and that white top to Damascus, they feel like they're running that pace, but they're running about 1 minute faster. And while they don't know it, your body knows it, right? And it comes undone for you. And for the majority of the people, I really want them to mix walk breaks up in that first time coming down, right? That oh gosh, and it's so important to mix those in, right? And not unless you're able to train on that. If you're able to train on 18 miles of downhill at 2 2 to 3% grade, your quads are probably ready for it, right? But not all of us have access to that kind of distance on that road, right? And I see it in Abington when people turn around, their legs are spent, and now they got to go 66 miles, right? And that's what you set the tone for the whole race from White Top to Damascus, right? And what you do is you walk, get some walk breaks, just really put a watch on yourself, right? Like dial it back. It feels comfortable, right? It's exciting. You take out of there and you're like, running feels so easy for so long, right? And until your ass leaves Damascus and you're on that 2% upgrade already to Alvarado and that part, and that's would save a lot of people's races. So,
and I've heard you give that warning twice, and probably both times I've probably overdone it. But it is, to your point, it's so sneaky because it doesn't feel like downhill. It just feels smooth
because it's morning. The weather is cool and crisp. You're feeling fresh. You've just come off your taper. You are flying. Like you're definitely flying because there's people running around you that are going faster than you're like, I can run with them.
Right. and visually, you're right. It doesn't look downhill. Like it's not a visual thing. And that's where people's races come apart. That really sets the tone, right? It should not, if your goal is to just finish, right? Like you show up, that should be your main priority. It is to mix walk breaks in there, and eat like 6 and 2s, whatever you do, right? If you get to Abington doing that run walk in 8.5 hours, you set yourself up and you still feel pretty good. You're gonna put together a great race. I've seen Tom Green coming in there in 3 minutes before the cutoff in Abington, walking behind a stroller and finish the race in 29 hours. So just, people's minds are like, someone, I'm not very convinced that you can bank that much time in 100, right? I'm not convinced. I think you have to run this very solid race from mile 1 to 100,
So some of our most popular guests, and I'm guessing you probably recognize the name, but Jeff and Katie Wilson, they've been out there every year and they do the walk run intervals. And if you're plugging in for the first time, if you haven't listened to that episode, go find Jeff and Katie Wilson. We talk specifically about the Yeti. They use exactly what you're talking about, walk run intervals, sub 24-hour times, the majority of the time. But to your point, they watch everybody run away and eventually they catch them all back because they're being conservative on that first part. It's just so smart.
They even do that interval in a 50K. One time they caught my ass at Virginia Beach at the Seashore 50K doing that bullshit run walking a 50K.
they do it. I've become pretty good friends with them. Yeah. I've become pretty good friends with them. They do it. Generally, they do a 4-2, a 4-minute run, 2-minute walk, and they are consistent.
In fact, the first time you saw them was at Yeti.
At Yeti, that's where I first met them.
Yeah.
And they blew right by me.
So great advice. So that to say, and we could probably tell stories all day, but all that to say, when you show up at the Yeti, listen to Jason at the beginning. He's not kidding, because it's a long time to pay for, the sin of taking the first 18 miles too fast.
The goal is to be fresh enough when you get to White Top the second time to run down that time.
Then you can cruise.
Then you can just fly.
And you can go on like Amazon and get a gym buddy for like $5, and that you just run your race by that, like the first part of the race. I see people do it all the time now, and it works out pretty well for them.
Yeah,
that's what all that beeping in the woods are.
That's right.
That's us beeping.
Beep. Beep, beep. The gym boss is what it's called. That's what it's called, right? Yeah.
Let's talk aid stations. So we've got the typical conversation about aid stations, and I'm going to kind of take you on a little bit of a tangent first. Explain to everybody when they start trying to look up race reports in the Yeti 100, they're going to start seeing this thing about some random soda machine. What is that about?
So it randomly came about. It's been there. Who knows how it ended up there, but it's been there since I've the last 15 years, right, that I've known. And when we used to just show up and run 100 miles. This is how the race started. And people got in the habit of leaving like whiskey in there for each other. And so every race, like, that's what people did. And so word got out that the Pepsi machine will save your race, right? Because people will be coming back up or to the finish and do a shot of Jack Daniels or whatever and finish, right? And then it evolved into Fireball. And it's this, right? And it does. Sometimes there's some magic in there to help you get a little push to the finish. So you're right.
So
I like that runners leave things in there for each other.
Yeah. I have, like I said, we're going to talk about aid stations because that's the legit thing. I remember seeing a soda machine on the side of the thing, and it is some old dilapidated like soda machine. I thought if somebody ever drinks something out of this machine, they have got really a strong gut. I did not even go to see because I was afraid something's going to like take my hand off if I try to stick my hand in it. So kudos to everybody who's got that kind of bravery and that kind of gut. That's not me, but.
And you know that from that machine to Alvarado is a very like lonely kind of hard place, right? You know that. And so I have done my fair share of shots of Fireball. Like, because, you know, every year, you know, I run an end to end, you know, by myself, like self-supported. So I'll do a shot there because between the machine and Alvarado sometimes just starts to drag on me pretty hard, you know?
That is a lonely. I do remember from my first race because the second one I didn't make it back to there. But yeah, man, that was a lonely stretch. And I saw, you know, a headlight way out in front of me, a headlight way back behind me, and I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing out here? But yeah, it's
a little grind, right? Like, oh, yeah.
So, but let's talk about the aid stations, like you said. For anybody that's watching, listening, they want to know, hey, when they show up, what can they expect? So, kind of how many, how far apart, what should they expect at the aid stations? Let's cover that stuff.
So, the very first one is 10 mile, like 9.9 miles away at Taylor's Valley, right? You don't, it's downhill, like we said, so you don't need anything. No, some people even bypass that. And then Damascus is another like 6.7, you know, 7.5 away. And then you have Alvarado. And we've started doing Watauga as water drops, like in warm years. And then we'll do Abington at the turnaround, you know, and some of them are like 8.9 miles away. And that may seem like a big distance, but this is highly runnable terrain, right? And so, and on the way back, you get one at Green Cove up above Taylor's Valley. Remember that? And we will never, ever in this life put people or an aid station on White Top. But our DNF rate would soar, right? And that's just why there's no one up there. And, because you get there and you're pretty zonked, right? Like you know, one time I parked my car up there, ran to Abington and ran back. I was training for the Miwok 100K and I was just zombie walking up there, right? Trying to get to my car. But that's why we don't put anyone up there. People would drop by the boat, van loads if I put someone up there. Because if you can just turn around, right? It's like we said, it's downhill back, right? And that's all you need.
So you made me think of something that perplexed me when I finished it the last time. When I got to White Top, is the goal to touch the build and then turn around? Because I saw people like, "Where's the turnaround spot?" And somebody said, "Touch the build," and I was like, "Cool, that's what I'm gonna do." So, do we touch the building?
Yeah, flagpole. If you're old school, building if you've just joined the race. So that's our. Yeah. So that's our that's what we do. The course is measured right from the building there, awesome. Right there at the edge where you touch it. So that's why we put it there. And you know, you're in a 100-mile race. You shouldn't need a sign to tell you where to turn around up there.
Come on, man. That is harsh. It's like touch the building, dude.
And I try to lets everyone who listened at the start line to my words knows where to turn around, right? Those who failed to, they're like, "What are we doing?"
That's if you can remember what happened that morning, right? By the time you get back up into and it's dark.
So then the next time somebody finishes your race and they told you they measured short, you ask them if they touched the building or touched the flagpole. And if they didn't give you the right answer, tell them to go back and do it again.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's the sad problem with watches, right? They will never give you an accurate reading. And especially up between Damascus and White Top, it's really hard to get any kind of service from a GPS or anything up there.
Yeah.
You know, and we try to track and even bounce off a satellite, and it's so tough up there to get accuracy of any kind.
Yeah.
So I will say from my personal experience, the volunteers have always been fantastic at the aid stations. Obviously, I'm assuming Damascus, because I wasn't there the last couple of years, but I'm assuming Damascus is still kind of the primary major aid station. Is that correct?
That's a big primary because it's the drop bags there. You know, we usually put that's the first hot food you see on the way back, right? Like Craig's probably there usually most times with his food truck. You know, it's kind of that making it point, right? I always tell people just make it back to Damascus the second time, right? Like,
right.
That, you know, not in too quick of a fashion. A lot of times people say, I like to sit in Damascus and see everyone at 50 miles. And they're like, I just PR'd my 50 mile. Right. And I'm like, oh, no.
That's true.
And the other good thing is, you'll probably also see lots of rainbows, unicorns, and glitter.
And Yetis.
Yeah, of course. And Yetis. Lots of celebration. So and dancing.
It's a party.
It really is.
I have to tell you, the volunteers truly make the event. Like I wish I could tally how many races they save. That, you know, everyone's crazy in costumes, but they do everything they possibly can to get people moving forward, and they do a great job. I'm lucky to have them, you know.
Right.
So, I'm always so, since we started, amazed at the volunteers, right? And and I volunteer, so my rule is every 3 races I run, I volunteer at a race. So I think and that's what my mentor taught me. So that's kind of the rule I live by. So, and ultra running is for every 3 races, I'll volunteer to race. You know, when you run a shit ton of races, like we used to run like 12, 13, you know, we run like 12 races a year, right? Like, so, you know, those early days, it's like, how do we run so many? You know what I mean? Like, geez. But I still do it. I still use races as long training runs. Sure, and I really train on them. Like, I don't race them, and I use them. And get to gain that valuable in-race experience by doing that, right? If you're at home in a controlled environment running on the trails, you know, right? You don't get that race experience of when things go sideways, unfamiliar territory, you know, learn to put your race and yourself back together.
Yeah, for sure. So I forgot to mention earlier in the intro, which I typically would mention this, is that this race is also a Western States qualifier.
Yes.
And that's a big deal for a lot of people. It's also what draws people to the area to be a part of it. But to get into it, there's obviously a registration process. That's I love the registration process. I think you've actually tweaked it a couple times, I believe, for this race as well.
Yeah.
And so, can you give people an idea of what they need to do on January 1st at 8:00?
So I've been leaning towards this. Just get up and sign up. The lottery and picking people seem very anticlimactic for me a lot, right? Like, it's like, oh, that's not like, you wake up on the New Year's Day, sign up for a big goal, and you know what you need to do to put it together, right? So that's what I want people. And Ultra Sign Up has gotten a lot better with their bullshit. You know, like when Mark used to own it, remember people would be in queue for 15 minutes trying to check out, right? So those days are kind of gone. So, you know, they still, the problem is people will have like 2-3 devices, like home computer up, mobile phone, like to register for a race. And so, you know, it bottlenecks it where there may be only 100 people trying to register there's 300 devices like attacking, right? So, but I think they got it mostly worked out. I think Dan Yeti last year had a little bit of a hiccup. It's causing like a 3-4 minute wait, but I definitely, that lottery, I was just kind of like, there's so much shit in the lottery. Like, I want to get away from the lottery, right? And if you just put it on your calendar and sign up, I think that's the way to start the year, right? This is what I'm doing.
So that's the way it
Is
does
that
now.
what to expect on this coming January then? It's going to be first come, first
Yes.
served?
Yes. And I keep a wait list now to try to get entrance to the course, right? Because I noticed over the years we'll have a big, like, just most races are having a little bit larger DNS rate, right?
Yep.
During COVID, that year, during and after, everyone showed up for every race because they didn't have to go to fucking work or what, you know what I mean? And everybody was working from home. But now we're back to where violin recitals get in the way, graduate, whatever it may be in September, kids returning to school, right? So we now keep a wait list, and I only keep a wait list of people to a depth where you will most certainly get in. So it's not like you know what I mean? And that's it, right? And I think that's a good, fair way to do it for everyone. Like, so you're on the wait list. It might take you 4 months, but you get in, right?
Yeah, if you get on the wait list, you need to start training, in other words.
Right.
Yes, and I tell people that. I'm like, you will get in. We don't keep a wait list and keep people hanging on. That way they can find another race to do a goal race. And we have to self-regulate. As you can see, we have, the only way we get people up is for bike shuttle vans, right? Because there's no tour buses or buses up there to get people up. So that's our max load, is getting up there. So,
and what is the capacity for the race again?
I let 300 in, sometimes 325, and depend on how many vans are available. So if my friend in Abington's running his vans, we'll go 325. So
we need the friend. We always want
He's been pretty good lately. COVID and stuff, other things kind of, it's hard for people to get back to business,
For sure. Well, and so everybody's listening to 300 people at the start. It doesn't feel crowded so let's talk about just quickly the course, right? So it's a rails to trail.
Yeah.
It's wide. Like we said, it's flat. It's non-technical until you're 60 miles in the dark, and then you will find the smallest rock that you swear is a giant tree branch until you turn around and it can't find it with your light, because I took 2 good diggers on the way back down. But so it's a great course in terms of people, and I remember fondly just kind of that initial start.
And that 50 and 100 is some of the bloodiest course I've ever seen, right? Because you get lulled into barely picking your feet up, and then people forget the train had to go uphill, and they were just burning so much coal. And coal will slice you open like a knife, spent coal will.
Yeah. Like I said, I took a couple good hard falls, was convinced that there was a brick or something in the road, and you find the tiniest little rock. But
I have an album in my phone of people who still have Creeper Trail coal dust, like where that gravel's in them and they can't get out like a couple pieces. It's awesome.
It's still by definition considered non-technical.
Correct. I mean, it's definitely non-technical.
It's non-technical. Just don't get too lazy with your feet, right?
and in certain sections, use that headlight to try to avoid the cow patties, because they'll leave some treats for you as well.
Well, that just makes an adventure. Yeah, it's part of it. It's part of it.
For everybody watching, there's a section, you kind of go through these gates, and I didn't realize at first until I realized, like, oh, I'm in here with the cows. And at night, it gets more interesting, right? Because you have your light, all you can see is the course, and then you hear the moves or the different snorts, and you're like, man, just stay over there,
But they do.
They do. Yeah, I mean, low threat, but it.
Low threat. They're no threat. Cows. They're dairy cows.
And you know what I do? I do understand. There's this race I run in North Georgia, and most of it, is in the nighttime. And if you've ever heard a screech owl when you've been by yourself in the middle of the woods, it's terrifying, like terrifying. I will take a cow over a screech owl any day of the week.
Yeah, for sure. That's so awesome.
I'd like to go back to the registration process. So if that's okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned that we were, that it's going to be a first come, first serve, click the button, get registered and get all your information in and get out of the system because you're blocking up bandwidth, right? But you can take 300 people, possibly up to 325, just depends on if your friend has a van. But the other thing to note is that when you're registering for the race, there are qualifying standards or qualification races that you do expect. And so we don't want everybody just to give it a whirl and just take up the space. Like you need to have qualified. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So here's the deal. I never want to take the spark out of anyone. If you woke up 3 months ago and say, my dream is to run 100 miles, I just require you to run a 50-mile on your way to the race, right? That can be at your house, can be around, or run 100-miler in the last couple of years, right? I just want people to get there trained and know the distance, right? So for a while, like a couple of years, the reason I add that is I would like go on the internet. Someone's like, I haven't trained at all, and I'm just going to give it a go, right? And it really, and things happen, people DNF. But I think to me, I was like, during that year or two, we saw our DNF rate go up. Mm-hmm. And then this year with the I was like, hey, just run a 50-miler on your way. Like that should be part of your plan coming to a 100-miler in September anyway, is to have a 50-mile race in there, right. Or running at your house. And I think it worked out real well this year. People showed up very well trained. We got our finish rate back to high. Good weather helped all that out. But I think it helps. I think it helps people put together a race training plan leading up to the goal race. And I want people to have Yeti 100 as their goal race of the year. Like that's what they have in mind, right? Every race is leading up to it. And it helps out a lot when everyone shows up trained, right? It helps the volunteers out, it helps everyone out.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to have qualifiers like that or qualifications like that. It's not a bad thing to say we want people to have done a 50-mile or something like that in the previous 12 months or even a 100-mile in the previous 2 years, because you want to have experienced some of that so you kind of know what you're getting into. It does help, and it's not a negative for anybody who has the Yeti 100 or any other 100 on their dream list of doing one, right? But it's just that, like, if you want to do it, let's do it, and let's do the stuff to get you there and get you to that finish, because ultimately that's the goal. You don't want to just go out and hang out and suffer for no fun. You want to finish the thing, and so I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, and you could just go say, you can only afford one race for the year. You're more than welcome just to do it at your house. You could do some sort of challenge over 24 hours and make 50 miles, right? I just want everyone to put forth a little effort, train, and I think it works out. And I'm not the police. I don't have time to go check everybody. But it's ultra running, and I think it's important that we keep everything on your word, right? And keep the integrity there. And like I said, I was not let down this year. People showed up very healthy, trained, and they look pretty good.
Well, you may not.
I got to give out a shit ton of buckles. That's always good, right? Like,
Jason, I'm gonna tell you, you may not check, but if on January 1st at 8 p.m. when I'm clicking the button and I don't get in, I'm going to look through that entire entrance list to confirm every one of them have a 50-miler, or I'm kicking them out.
So, some people, that's why they don't make the race. They will self-police. They give me an email, and that's how we get people on the wait list. They're like, hey, Jay, I couldn't run 50 miles and people are very honest. And
that's good.
And I want to keep that in ultra running, right? Where it's all about your word.
Yeah. I like that.
And so, right? Because nobody's winning a car at the end of it, right? You know what I mean?
Oh, man. Change of plan.
Never mind.
I mean, I still got to buy the goo packets, for Christ. We don't even have sponsors.
That's actually one of the things that I love about you and about your races, man, is you're so relational. And to me, that vibe, exactly what you just said, of just kind of the integrity, the honesty, let's just do this really more as friends, than anything else. I think it's part of the reason why the community is what the community is, and why people feel so accepted is because you kind of lead with that example. So I think it's cool that you say, hey, you're not the police, but the fact that people feel the need to go, look, man, I didn't honor my agreement, right? Yeah.
To me, that's a perfect ultra runner. That's our community. That's what I think of our community. I think everyone is that high of standard, right? And
right.
Because you do that for yourself. You're not out there for anyone else. This is, and I like that such integrity is involved in ultra running.
100%.
I agree. I like it.
Well, look, man. So obviously, for anybody listening, watching, we can't pitch it hard enough. Yeti 100 has to be on your calendar. Yeah, experience. It was just such an experience. Like I said, we've got batting 50%, right? And both the experiences were incredible. I definitely would love to come back. But dude, your community, everything about the race, I just think people need to experience it. And one thing we didn't really touch on, but I'm guessing most people picked up on it, right? So it's 3 legs of the trail. It's great for crew. And so, my wife is out there. It's super easy to bounce back and forth because you're coming through the different areas. So if you like to have a crew or have your family with you, great opportunity for that. But right now, I'll just say thank you to the Ultra Running Guys community. If you've been plugging in, we appreciate you so much. If it's your first time and you're here to see Jason, thanks for stopping in. We have the show. Check it out. We'd love that. But Jason, dude, you're awesome. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for all the kind words. Usually I just field customer complaints.
The life of a race director.
Oh my God. Same, right?
Yeah. You
That's
didn't
awesome.
have Diet Mountain Dew at the aid station. What the hell are you doing over
there? That's awesome. But seriously, man, thank you for everything you do for the community, because it's a lot. Legitimately.
Thank you guys so much.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
But we'll put all the links in the show notes. And so it'll be there. Go check it out. Jason, we appreciate you. And for everybody else, we'll talk soon.
Bye. Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the content. If you haven't already, don't forget to check out our full lineup of podcast episodes that are designed to help you take your next step in your ultra running journey.
So be sure to check the links below, and you can visit our website at theultrarunningguys.com or download your episodes on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And remember, when in doubt, just show up.
See ya.